Let's just jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a wild one, how America's supposedly most innovative company built a billion-dollar empire entirely on a devastating lie. We're talking, of course, about the incredible rise and the totally catastrophic fall of Enron.
$70 billion. I mean, just think about that number for a second. That was Enron's peak valuation back in the year 2000. So how exactly does a corporate titan with a valuation that massive manage to literally fake its success? How do you completely fool major investors, powerful banks, top-tier accountants, and, oh yeah, the US government?
So part 1, building the illusion. We're going from natural gas to weather derivatives.
You know, Enron's roots were actually completely ordinary. Founded in 1985, they were just a simple, straightforward natural gas transport company. Nothing crazy. But the whole shebang changed when two ambitious executives took control with this grand, almost utopian vision. You had Kenneth Lay, the charismatic chairman, and Jeffrey Skilling, the brilliant consultant turned CEO. And they decided Enron shouldn't just sell energy, they wanted to be the smartest guys in the room, literally. So from transporting gas, they kicked off this meteoric, almost illogical expansion. They jumped into electricity and water in the early 90s, pivoted to internet and telecom in the late 90s, and by 2000, they were trading weather derivatives. Seriously. And Wall Street, they absolutely ate it up, sending the stock price right through the roof.
The hype was just absolutely everywhere. Fortune magazine actually named them America's most innovative company. And the culture inside Enron? It was euphoric. The executives were treated like literal rock stars by the press. But here's the tragic part. The employees genuinely believed they were building the future. They were so confident that they were proudly pouring their own life savings and retirement funds right back into company stock. They were completely unaware that this whole future they were building was, well, a complete illusion.
Which brings us to part 2, the magic trick, the actual art of corporate deception.
Because the core mechanism of Enron's so-called success wasn't actually brilliant innovation at all. It was just incredibly aggressive accounting loopholes. Look, in traditional accounting, you count the money when it actually hits your bank account, right? But Enron used this method called mark-to-market accounting. Imagine signing a 20-year contract today and then immediately counting every single dollar you expect to earn over the next 2 decades as profit today, on day one. Even if the project took years to finish or, ultimately failed completely, it didn't matter. It was instantly recorded as massive profit. They were literally claiming money that just did not exist yet.
But the deception didn't stop at fake profits. When the actual real debts started piling up, Enron turned to secret partnerships. They spun up hundreds of hidden shell companies basically for one reason: to hide their toxic debt. So while their public financials looked richer and richer every single quarter, behind closed doors, it was a totally different story. They were burying billions of dollars in ballooning debts inside these complex secret entities. They weren't highly profitable. They were just incredibly good at hiding the truth.
Part 3. Why nobody stopped them. A systemic failure of trust. So the million-dollar question, or I guess the $70 billion question, is why the people whose entire job is to spot fraud completely failed to expose Enron. Well, an entire ecosystem of supposedly objective institutions enabled this deception. Investment banks just kept recommending the stock to their clients. Credit rating agencies gave them incredibly strong ratings. Corporate auditors signed off on the financials without a peep. And the financial media? They were praising them almost daily on TV. And why? Largely because nobody wanted to hit the brakes on a machine that was making everyone incredibly rich.
And inside Enron, you had this highly toxic culture that rewarded profits over honesty, plain and simple. Employees who raised red flags, they usually stayed quiet. The executives projected this absolute, unwavering confidence, and honestly, confidence is contagious. Plus, the sheer scale of the company made everyone just assume someone else had already verified the facts. Sometimes, the greatest fraud survives simply because everyone thinks the other guy did the fact-checking.
Moving to part 4, the inevitable collapse, asking the right questions.
The cracks really started to show in early 2001, when a few journalists and analysts finally started asking the simplest, yet arguably the most dangerous question you can ask any business. Wait, how does Enron actually make its money? And nobody could give a straight answer. When people actually started digging, they found this glaring, massive discrepancy. Enron's reported financials showed record-breaking corporate profits, but the actual day-to-day business reality showed they were generating surprisingly little cash. It just didn't add up. Rumors spread, confidence evaporated, and those hidden billions in debt, they were finally dragged into the light.
And man, once that illusion shattered, the unraveling was just extraordinarily fast. In early 2001, journalists uncovered the hidden debts.
By October, Enron absolutely shocks investors by publicly admitting major accounting errors and quickly reveals billions in hidden liabilities. And then literally just weeks later, the company scrambles to file for what was at the time the largest corporate bankruptcy in U.S. history. A company once worth tens of billions was suddenly practically worthless.
Just look at this metric. The stock price collapsed from near $90 a share down to less than a single dollar. Banks completely cut off new loans, and investors just rushed for the exits. This massive wipeout instantly vaporized the retirement savings of all those loyal employees who had trusted the company, and it completely destroyed the portfolios of countless everyday investors who had bought into the hype.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the cost of deception, the human toll and lasting legacy.
The collapse of the $70 billion empire sent absolute shockwaves across the globe. The sheer devastation was massive. We're talking over 20,000 employees losing their jobs outright. Billions of dollars in savings just vanishing into thin air. Even Arthur Andersen, which was one of the world's largest accounting firms at the time, completely collapsed after being implicated in the mess. But it did force a serious reckoning. CEO Jeffrey Skilling went to prison, and Chairman Kenneth Lay was criminally convicted. Most importantly, though, this whole scandal forced lawmakers to pass the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in 2002. This introduced way stricter corporate accounting rules to ensure transparency and accountability. The financial world was literally never the same after this. At the end of the day, Enron didn't collapse because it lacked ambition. The ultimate lesson here is that Enron replaced truth with illusion. The executives honestly seemed to believe they could hide reality forever. But as we saw, flashy presentations, incredibly famous CEOs, and record-breaking stock prices, they are never absolute proof of honesty. Sometimes the companies that project the absolute most strength are actually hiding the biggest, most fatal weaknesses.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. If Enron happened today, would we actually spot the warning signs? In our modern era of massive hype, buzzwords, and soaring tech valuations, are we truly immune to the illusion? Or would the exact same story happen all over again? Because, while history doesn't always repeat itself, it sure does rhyme a lot. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and hey, always keep asking the right questions.